Yeah, look, I'm not an attorney, right? Just an industry stakeholder. My wife's actually an attorney and could, she schools me on this stuff. But Freightwaves article, should there be laws protecting trucking companies from nuclear verdicts? And it goes on to talk about House Study Bill 114. I believe this is in Iowa. Yeah, Iowa. So they're trying to do some tort reform, right? Like I think overall tort reform is like a really good thing. I don't really agree with how this actual bill would work. So it says in here the bill would cap non-economic damages at $1 million if someone tries to sue a case involving a commercial truck driver. Typically non-economic damages is like pain, distress, suffering, whatever, due to the accident. I guess to separate like economic and non-economic damages is an interesting idea. I don't know how you can really separate those things. Like that seems like to me it would be another trial, right? To really try to get that nailed. I'm just thinking like the simplest thing to do if you want to do tort reform is limit the compensation of the accident attorneys. Like, these guys go out and sue a trucking company. They get $100 million verdict of that, or hell, use the average $22 million verdict. Of that, the accident attorney is probably going to take half right into their pocket, right? And like, there's no way that they incurred $11 million in time, labor, research expenses in this trial. I think you limit the accident attorney's take of these cases, and that puts an end to this. Like Iowa's kind of, it seems to me, trying to treat the symptom, but like ultimately that does impact the victim. Like, let's face it, in a lot of these accidents, people are really hurt, and they should probably be able to be compensated for that and sue for that. But the problem is when you tack on the accident attorneys 50%, this thing gets really out of hand, right? And it incents accident attorneys to put billboards all over the countryside and sue for these like really frivolous cases that should never get to court. That's my opinion. But
oh my goodness, a trucker sneezed and now I'm hurt and I don't know how I'll ever drive next to a truck again. So lawsuit.
Right.
It's like, but yeah. So and I see Florida and Texas being mentioned here too. And so it seems like people are becoming more aware that this is happening, right? That like there are bigger and bigger lawsuits. I literally a week ago or something, I was reading there's apparently a $900 million lawsuit in Texas from a few years ago. Apparently it was like a Landstar truck or something. I'll pop it up on the screen when I'm editing this thing, but it was absolutely ridiculous. $900 million from a lawsuit. Like, I mean, I get it. Like somebody passed away and it was an elderly person. I understand. Can you put a price on a human's life? No, you cannot. But I'm sure those accident attorneys were happy to get a 900, or half of roughly whatever. They were happy to get a $200, $300, $400 million payday. And I mean, but then again, here's the question: like, how does that actually get paid out? If the trucking business goes bankrupt, like, how does that get paid out? Do we know?
Well, it doesn't, right? That's the thing. I mean, I got advice early in my business career. I was sued as part of a class action lawsuit, and one of the other gentlemen, this is kind of funny, was the president of Oklahoma State University. It was when I was in school, and they sued him and a bunch of students in the university. And I was a little worried, right? I was like, I'm a college kid. I don't have any money. Like, I don't know how I'm going to deal with this. And the president of the university was like, here's the secret to lawsuits. He's like, just remain uncollectible. That was his advice, right? So, yeah, I think that the reality is it doesn't. Like, it gets, the insurance company's obviously going to pay, they have to.
Right.
But, and they can, seize assets or whatever if it gets to that point. But, like, at the end of the day, the truck company doesn't have $900 million, it ain't going to happen.
Okay. And so then is there a necessity for tort reform? If like basically no trucking company could pay out $900 million. I mean, even the biggest trucking companies.
Well, yeah, but it just makes you go out of business, right? It just makes you go out of business. And it makes the cost of insurance so astronomically high.
think there's definitely a need for it, whether there's a realistic path to it.
That's the thing. I mean, yeah, there's definitely a need. And take it out of trucking specifically, like think about slip strips and falls and like there's just this whole like frivolous lawsuit trend going on where these accident attorneys, they're literally getting rich. And I said this in one of our YouTube videos, Alex. It's like, who has the money to lobby state politicians? Well, it's not the trucking companies, it's the damn accident attorneys, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to follow along to see how, like, you know, it does seem like it's getting a little bit more attention. So it's going to be interesting to follow along to see exactly how this progresses and if there's, you know, anything that comes out of it. But yeah, essentially in this Iowa bill, yeah, like you.
Does the ATA get involved with this?
You know, I think all these organizations are involved, right? I mean, OIDA, ATA. I think everybody wants to see tort reform. It's obviously really good for, you know, for trucking companies, right, and for insurance companies.
Right.
And the cost of doing business. It's good for everybody.
Right, and not to mention, imagine you're a big trucking company, you know, whatever, 1,500 trucks. You get sued for 50, 80, $100 million. What do? You lay off 1,500 drivers plus all the support staff. Like, that's a sizable business that now has to shut down because of one freak accident. You know what I mean? Like most trucking companies have generally at that size have a decent safety score. And so it's like, goodness gracious, what are the options there? But yeah, regardless, it'll be interesting to follow along. Matt, anything else to add on tort reform or lawsuits or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like, so trucking, what is trucking in terms of what it brings, what it controls in freight distribution, in getting products from point A to point B. It's like what? Anything on the shelves of your local store is 90% trucking.
Yeah, like 70% or so is
you know, there's things like tort reform. I've been hearing about it for 20 years plus, and it just gets worse and worse every year, right? And like Flint was saying, I mean, there's not doesn't seem like there's a lot of collective money there to lobby, but there seems like there should be a lot of collective power, you know, where, like, for instance, a trucker strike, something like that. Not recommending that. Definitely don't want to deal with that. Well, but look, know, that kind of thing. I mean, there is a lot of power there. We heard about that last year. So
yeah, and this stuff ultimately hits the consumer, right? When it costs more money to transport goods via higher interest or insurance rates and via these big lawsuits, like.
Right.
That ultimately hits the consumer.
Right. And that's exactly what we need during this high inflationary period, more increased costs because of lawsuits. So yeah, that's an interesting perspective. It's like, because so much of the products does get delivered by trucks, why aren't more people like fighting for tort reform to protect the trucks, I guess? Yeah, that's interesting.